Welcome, my friends, back to the Dialed In Pod. I'm Mo, and as always, I'm with my horological partner in crime and music industry bestie, Gene.
Welcome back. I think we've got a really interesting topic today that's been discussed before, but I feel like we've got some unique thoughts about it, but specifically around the kind of connective tissue and community that is around watches and timepieces, and the way that we've met people and developed relationships and rapport based on just what we're wearing, the way you can strike up conversations out of thin air.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I think we got a lot to say. And as always, there's no barrier to entry here, just a love for watches. So with that, let's get dialed in. Before I begin and take us on a journey actually of how Gene and I met, I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about a little bit about our background. I want to do a wrist check because we forget to do that every now and again.
We do.
So Gene, tell me what's on your wrist.
I am wearing an Omega Seamaster No Time to Die. Just a watch that I saw and fell in love with, and I kind of find as things stick with me and they stay on my mind for a few days, few weeks, that's always a signal for me that maybe it's something I should get, because there are moments when I just fall in love with something for a few hours or something like that. But if it's really sticking with me, it's something that I know that I should consider purchasing.
Yeah, I know that fleeting love of what. Yeah,
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the Instagram generation that we're living through or what it is, but it's it's hard to make impulse decisions. So it's good to like think about it. And if you're still waking up on a daily basis thinking about it, it's good. But you have like a really interesting strap on it. It looks pretty awesome. Tell me about that.
Well, I think straps are one of the ways that you can really sort of put personality and customize your watch. And in my case, for the Seamaster No Time to Die, just because it is a brown bezel, brown dial, I thought it would be great to put a new strap on it. So I reached out to Aaron Bespoke and put on a blue suede kind of quilted strap on it. So I think it's unique, but makes it. I just think the color combination between that brown and kind of that navy blue suede is it just works.
Dude, it looks great, and we'll put a pic on the gram of it. But it's I wouldn't have thought those colors would work together as well as they do. It's it like pops, but it also blends. It's real nice.
Yeah. What are you wearing?
Today I got in on the Old Faithful. I'm wearing a rose gold Daytona on Oyster Flex chocolate dial. It's the 116. This dial got discontinued after the 11s went out and 12s are in. I love it, man. I gotta be honest, this dial gets me every single time, and I get a lot of compliments on it, and people who don't like watches or know about watches always say that's a stunning watch. And I'll say it again, I'm an Indian guy, so the chocolate dial, even just on my skin, on the rose gold, it's great.
Well, the rose gold with chocolate combination is stunningly gorgeous. I actually have a day date, a rose gold with chocolate dial. I think just those two colors work so well together. And to your point around skin tone and some of that stuff, I think there are other reasons, but I just think that combination is something that...
Dude, it's sick. Like the Aquanaut, what is it, 5167R? Beautiful. Oh my God. Like that rose gold and brown also is amazing.
And the Oyster Flex is so versatile. It's so comfortable. I have a Yachtmaster in rose gold on an Oyster Flex, and it is one of my favorite watches to wear day to day just because of the comfort. So I'm here for it.
And to some degree, I don't know, people are probably gonna be like, it's not, it's not low key at all, and it isn't, because it's gold, but at the same time, it's not a full gold bracelet, and you I don't know, it's something about it gives it more versatility on that strap.
I think the rubber tones it down, in addition to making it a bit less formal and just sportier.
Wait, before we dive in, because I know we want to talk about watches connecting people, but now I'm just curious on your thoughts. A lot of people have feelings about wearing Oyster Flex with like more formal wear. Like, so if you were wearing a sport coat or a full suit or even a tux, I don't know, maybe that's too over the top, but would you wear Oyster Flex with that?
Yeah, I originally would tell you that not something I do. I will say that I was at the airport the other day, and maybe this dovetails into the conversation that we're going to have, but I was in the Delta Lounge and I saw a man there who was wearing a navy blue suit, super crisp, white shirt, no tie. But he happened to be also wearing a Rolex Yachtmaster 42 white gold with Oyster Flex. And I saw it and I just thought, that really works. It just looked great. So I probably would have told you no fairly recently, but having seen someone actually wear an Oyster Flex with a suit in this particular instance, I thought it worked.
Yeah, and also wear whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
Because like we said in previous episodes, like just wear what you love,
Yeah.
wear it with whatever you want to wear it with, and don't worry about what other people think.
Completely.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So I thought this is actually a good opportunity to like talk about how we met. Because, you know, as I mentioned at the intro, you know, we've known each other because of the music industry for actually quite some time. We've been across some deals together, run into each other. I don't know. It always remained pretty professional with us. We were never like, you know, we weren't like instant friends, if you will. Right. It was always cordial, but you know, I
attribute that to your standoffishness and arrogant attitude, but you know, we can talk about that later.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll get into that later. But you know, it was actually when we actually started working together, and you were coming from one of the big tech companies already on the music side, and coming to yet another big tech company. Let's call them FANG companies, or maybe they're Mag 7 now. I don't know what the hell we're calling them anymore.
Mag 7? I'm not even familiar with that term.
Yeah.
That's a new one? Okay.
Magnificent 7 is what it stands for. Yeah. You got to get on your CNBC game.
Yeah,
man.
need to.
So when you joined this Mag 7 FANG company that I was at on the music side, you know, these big tech companies like to do these silly things called like onboarding buddies, because, you know, onboarding onto one of these companies is actually like a ridiculous task. You have to learn the processes and the lingo and all the, you know, how things work, who to go to for what. And we were actually getting ready for our Zoom call to talk through some of this beginning like onboarding, and we get on the call, and I remember this so well. I asked you how you're doing, and you had actually called me before you accepted the offer here, and so we had a little bit of conversation prior, and we're just catching up on life, and I'm about to dive into to, you know, what the onboarding stuff that you need, and you go, hold up. Before we do anything work related, is that a Royal Oak on your wrist, and are you a watch guy?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh snap. Yes, it is. And you asked me like the history of it, why I got it, when I got it, what else is in my collection, if there is a collection. And obviously I asked you those questions back. And I think we must have gone on a 30-minute tangent such that I had maybe 3 minutes left to tell you about anything work related. And from that moment on.
So that was the problem then. No,
from that moment on, it was like ride or die homies, you know? And like, I think every time we had to speak anything work related, just because we worked on the same team together, I mean, we'd always start our conversations with watch news. Like, did you see that recent Talking Watches or whatever it was? And it really connected us beyond. And of course we have a lot of other common interests that were uncovered through just becoming good friends. But what definitely made us friends and more than colleagues almost immediately was watches.
Yeah, I mean, it was an entry point, right, to the relationship that we ultimately built. And watches do that. Talked a little bit earlier about how they exist, in some respect, as just connective tissue with people. What I generally find is, regardless of what you actually do professionally, and however you might or might not want to talk about that work, if you love watches, everyone that loves watches wants to talk about watches.
Dude, yes. I mean, listen, like it's a nerdy niche for most people, right? Like, yes, of course, there are the people who only know about watches that are, you know, the AP Royal Oak and the Nautilus, and that's or you know, maybe some Rolex model, and that's kind of the extent of their watch knowledge. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Listen, as a watch person, I love anyone that's taking any kind of interest, no matter where that interest is coming from. But a vast majority of people who will ask you about your watch, like, oh, they can't wait. They're champing at the bit to talk to you about watches.
It opens a door. Beyond that, it really kicks down a door that I think will generally open up a conversation that is very much like a tidal wave.
Well, that's actually what I want to kind of talk about today is that, so I'll lead it off with like, I've had a strange amount of conversations, like an odd amount of conversations with baristas. Okay, like I live in New York. We live in New York, and I go to like a Blue Bottle or in West Chelsea, there's a coffee shop I like called Urbana, and I'll walk in, and now this has happened a few times. I don't even remember what watches I was wearing. It could be anything from a Baltic to a Royal Oak, right? I mean, and the barista, after taking the order, will say, "Oh, I love your watch." And then, of course, I'll look at their wrist. And let's be honest, as watch people, we're always looking at people's wrists, like weirdly. But what ends up happening is, they're kind of sheepishly saying, "I like your watch." And I say, "Oh, what are you wearing?" And they're, sometimes it's like a shy, like, "Oh, I'm, like a Hamilton khaki Field." And I'm like, "That's awesome. Why did you pick that watch out of all the watches you could have picked in that price range or in whatever?" And you see them open up immediately, right? Like, again, like getting people talking about watches and then why watches are personal to them is this like amazing open door to your point that forget if you're whatever class, if you want to call it that, like rich, poor, ugly, beautiful, whatever it is, like watches are to me the ultimate connector.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone has watches. They purchase watches for a reason. And everyone loves talking about those reasons. So just speaking of Hamilton, I was having a conversation with someone the other day that I saw was wearing the Interstellar watch. And I said, is that the Hamilton watch from Interstellar? And that was the precise reason that they purchased it. But then it sort of became this conversation about Interstellar and just watches and movies in general. And again, kicking down a door and just opening a dialogue that turned into a 30-minute conversation. And that's not unusual.
Yeah. And I'll talk about it the other way around too, right? Here I was talking about, a barista that saw whatever watch I was wearing and commented on it. I was, and mind you, yes, time and place kind of mean everything here. So take it with a grain of salt. But I was sitting at a private members club in New York and sitting on the terrace out there and waiting actually for someone who I was having a meeting with to come. And I was sitting alone and I saw this group of guys, and as I looked from one wrist to the next, they all had like insane watches. One in particular was a AP Royal Oak, like double balance wheel open work in black ceramic.
Casual.
Dude, I had not ever seen this watch in person. And I'm not like typically someone to like fall over like someone who's wearing like a Nautilus 5712. As much as I love that watch, like I'm not just, I don't know. I guess maybe we're in certain places and you see it enough, I guess, that it's not something that you just like stop and you're like, holy shit. This one was a holy shit moment for me. And I had to say something. I was like kind of weirdly shy about it, but I was just like, damn, dude, like I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is an insane watch. And I've actually never seen it in person. It's absolutely beautiful. And I wanted to leave it there. Like I was already sort of embarrassed that I had said anything. And I mentioned like it's the first time I've seen it in person, right? This guy turns around and he was mid-conversation. He turns around to me and he's like, "Oh, dude, try it on." And he took it off his wrist. And mind you, the reason I say we're in like a private members club is because, of course, he felt comfortable giving it to me. Like I wasn't going to like run off in the middle of the street with his, I don't know, $300,000 watch, whatever the hell it goes for. And I put it on, and all I wanted to do was talk about it and talk about what watch I had on and talk about why he got that watch.
Right.
And I almost didn't have to ask him any questions. Like, I mean, first of all, someone wearing a ceramic open work AP, like, yeah, of course they want to talk about their watch.
Absolutely. I mean, he wore it with intention that day to get those looks and totally anticipating that there would be a conversation about it.
Dude, totally. But then I actually put it on my wrist. And I don't know, when would I have the opportunity I'm never going to buy that watch. As much as I love it, like I'm not,
maybe, but
sure. You know what? Hey, subscribe to this podcast.
Exactly.
Get us ad dollars. And
exactly.
Maybe but it was an amazing experience that I'll be honest, I was one of those people who kind of prejudged him. Like, I was almost shy about saying it's a nice watch because I thought he was going to be like this kind of douchey guy. I'd be like, yeah, so what? Like I got 7 of them, or something like that. But instead, he was sitting with a group of guys, like I mentioned, and they actually invited me over to sit with them and talk about watches, and told me about how they all connected through watches in the past.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's why they all had like these insane watches on their wrist. And they make a point to meet every quarter. And that was that quarter.
Oh.
And they were having like, I guess you're
So it's a
like
little watch
super
club.
high-end watch meetup.
Yeah, a little watch
which
club.
is wild.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point that I want to dig into a little bit, which is the fact you were at a private members club, because it was a safe space for him to know that there was no possibility that, to your point, you're going to run off with it or something was going to happen there. But you also talked about similar conversations with baristas, and maybe it's happened at restaurants or other public places. How do you feel about those types of conversations? Do they generate any kind of fear for you? Are there moments where that makes you uncomfortable? Just curious how you think about it, depending on the context and the place that you are.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I think it relies so heavily on context. I remember sitting outside in New York in the summertime wearing a two-tone root beer, GMT. And I'd actually just gotten it, right? And there was a waiter that came up to me, and I don't know, he was just kind of weird about it, like, and this is, I think, maybe goes to like how you approach people with watches on. One, like where you approach them in the context is important to keep in mind. And I think his first question was like, "Is that real?" And I was like, I don't know how to answer this. Like, that's a weird way to come up to someone, and like, I don't know, you're serving me. It was strange. And so I kind of think of that in the sense that if he had come up to me and said like, "Oh my God, like I love the old root beers and I haven't seen the new one in person yet. Like what, how does it feel?" Like I would have been way more open to talk about it. But instead I was like, damn, yes, it's real. I don't even know how to answer that. And it was just so uncomfortable. And then he proceeded to ask me, "Did you buy it retail or secondary?" And I was like, oh, these are weird questions, right? This is not why I bought the watch. This is not why he loves the watch and why he's talking to me about it. It was very much based on value, and those are the conversations that I'm uncomfortable about.
Right.
Like in this probably 45 minutes at that members club I was telling you about, that I had conversations with these guys. Not once did I ask any of them if they got them retail or secondary. And you know what? The amount of time I spent talking to them, it probably would have been okay if I did. But certainly not like a tip for everyone out there.
Not the lead in.
Yeah, like do not lead with, "Is that real?" One, that's a crazy question to ask. And two, definitely don't ask about the price or what they paid for it or how they, procured it, at least up front. That's I mean, maybe wait for like, 5-10 minutes into the conversation and be like, "Oh, do you have a relationship with an AD?" Or,
Right.
It was strange. Anyway, so to your question, like context matters, man. And I don't know, like in anything in life, approach it genuinely and from a place of genuine interest about that person. And first of all, like general life advice, like if you're ever worried about approaching someone, asking them about themselves. Oh, people love to talk about themselves, right? Like
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, that waiter could have asked me any question
Right.
About that watch besides the one he asked me. And I would have been way more open and talkative and whatever. Like, I have time for people who want to talk about watches.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. And like, if you want to tell me about the Casio you bought, 2 days ago, I want to know all the answers. Why you bought it? Why did you settle on that one? Is it a Casio? Is it an F91W? And whatever. Like, did your parents have watches growing up? Like, there are so many questions that can span from the nerdy sort of like, are you into watches because of the engineering behind it? Right. I mean, I can talk about that probably not as intelligently as a lot of people who are really into that side of watchmaking. Or even if you're just like, did you see Tom Brady's new watch? Which, like, if we're talking about the Jacob & Co., I don't want to talk about it, but I'm still here for it. Like, I'm here to talk about anything watch related. And I think like what we're getting at is that there's this like amazing ability. I'll bring it back to like to work actually, in my current place of work. Like, there's this senior guy at this company that is a tough nut to crack. And as much as you jokingly said I was standoffish at the front, I'm a pretty likable guy, and I
Totally kidding.
I tend to connect with people pretty easily, actually. And this guy was just like, he was all business. Never really wanted to talk about anything non-work related. And one day he was just asking me about my vacation in Italy, and I remember I said something like, "Oh, and I picked up a watch, and I went to Switzerland for a day from Italy." And immediately his face changed, and he goes, "Watch, what watch did you get?" And then he goes, "Oh, have you seen the new Cubitus? Like, what do you think about that?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, you're a watch guy?"
Yeah.
And I would totally crack the nut. Like, we now, every time we see each other, like, of course, he's still very business oriented, but he'll always have some quip at the beginning of, "Did you see this? Like,
Right.
did you see the Vacheron 222? What do you think of that?"
Right.
And I think that's awesome. And like, now I've opened a door, and let's see where it takes me. And I think this happens to everyone, such that like, if you find a common passion about literally anything, obviously it opens something up. But watches, something about it in particular is like, why people are into watches is always so interesting, right? Is it something in their past? They grew up with their parents that were into watches, or is it like more meta than that, like, or deeper than that, in the sense of like I'll tell you why I like watches, and why I romanticize watches. I love that we're living in 2025, and we got to get a damn new phone every year, every 2 years, because the battery starts to die.
Right.
And the thought of all of these pieces we're talking about, all these beautiful pieces, be it, whether they have Salida movements in them or in-house movements from some of the top luxury, watchmakers out there, they will live beyond us.
Absolutely.
And there's something so unbelievable and sort of like almost mystical about that you just don't have in our world anymore. And this is sort of the last vestige of that. And I like the idea. I mean, like, we all know the Patek Philippe like marketing lingo of like, you don't really own one, you just merely hold on over the next generation.
Yeah.
But they tapped into something there. There's a reason
Completely.
that campaign did so well, and it's because that's what is so romantic about watches. And of course, you can like it for the aesthetics, you can like it for the watchmaking and the engineering, like I said. But these pieces that will outlive us. And someone actually, sorry, I'll stop ranting in a second. But someone actually said something. I think it was on a Hodinkee. I don't know. They did the thing with UBS recently where they released a bunch of like mini talks that they did in live and in person, and they put them on YouTube. And I forgive me, I can't remember who said it, but they mentioned the reason they love watches that are passed down from family members in particular is because for an automatic watch, it is that person's life and energy that kept that watch moving. And to pass it on to you, now your life and energy keep that watch moving.
Right.
And so you're both the fuel to that watch.
That's
and I
really
just
cool.
thought something super poetic about that. And
very.
that's stuck with me since I heard it. Yeah.
The other thing that I'll say about watches that I think is interesting as well is we oftentimes purchase watches to celebrate particular milestones in our lives.
Yes.
And so there's stories attached to virtually every piece that I have. And I think that's probably true with you as well. So when you open that door, it does give you entry into that person's particular life story, because there are these moments, these landmarks over time that they're celebrating via these watch purchases. And you can generally get into those stories and you bond with people over that stuff. So
it's a huge part of it. Great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, one of the things that we just talked about is at these tech companies in particular, they've got these massive watch communities of people that, buy watches, share information about watches, that sort of thing. What's your experience been with some of these watch groups?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the big ones are like Watches at Google. I know Meta has a pretty engaged watch group. Amazon even has, I mean, they're all about frugality. So I don't think they have groups talking about luxury watches, but there's certainly, listen, man, watch collectors are everywhere. Everywhere, right? And the thing about these companies is I think Amazon employs over 1 million people. Google, Alphabet rather, Meta, they got a ton of employees. So of course you're going to have a certain percentage of people who are watch aficionados or enthusiasts, collectors. You pick your poison. And what's really cool is let's take Google's watches at, like they're probably the most known for this, because you see a lot of it on the secondary market, which I don't know if is if it's against their policies or not. But they do these watch collabs with Tudor is a big one who participates, right? And it's really about Tudor will do a watch, a customized watch for anyone that has enough people.
Yeah, I think the general minimum for Tudor is somewhere around 40 or 50, I think.
To me, that's kind of small, right?
Yeah, if you can get about 50 people together, Tudor will put something together for you.
And then there's George Bamford and his Bamford watch line. And I know he's done a couple of watches at stuff. I think IWC has done a few with watches at. I think even Chopard. There's some interesting ones out there that if you really dig, you can see some cool stuff. And what I like about it most is that it's a true community, right? So there's like all these Slack groups, or but Google is probably like Google Chat, and Amazon is probably a Chime group, or whatever the hell these companies use. But you find, like-minded people, and there's all like, it's basically like your own little Twitter feed, of people like you who, I don't know if they have the spending to go buy, like it's people at all levels too, right? But that doesn't really come into play.
Right.
No one's really flexing on these groups. Yes, they have wrist checks, and people will post their photos of their watches over their keyboards, and be like, another day at the office with my Hamilton or whatever it is. But like, I don't know, people are so excited to talk about it, and there's also this interesting thing.
It crosses boundaries, level, title, whatever. You can have a conversation across all of that.
Exactly. And there's also this weird like for sale portion of it too. So like there's rules around it. So I hear is that so you can't make a profit off a watch, right? And so people are really big about like, I want to keep this watch in the community. I could maybe flip it for a couple $1,000 more on Chrono, but I want someone in this group, in my community, to take as much pleasure from this watch as I have. And I'm selling it for whatever reason. And so there's a for sale piece, there's this collab piece, and then there's just the day-to-day chatter where people are like, what do you think? I'm traveling.
Sure.
How should I travel with watches? Or, it's, I mean, we should give them a link to our, one of our episodes about how to travel with watches. But
exactly.
But no, it's awesome, man. I think the watch groups are cool. I think, you mentioned talking to someone before we started recording. You told me you like had a conversation with someone on a plane about watches.
Absolutely.
I've had conversations in like Delta Sky clubs with people who
it happens all the time.
I was talking to this guy who saw one of my watches that I'm wearing on my wrist, and he asked me a question. I forget the question, and I answered it kind of taken aback. Not maybe I wasn't so engaged, but he then engaged with me, and he was like, yeah, I've been collecting watches for years, and I'm actually headed to Japan right now, and I'm excited to go to these 2 vintage watch stores. And I go, oh, well, tell me about that. And it turns out he was in the military, and he showed me these old root beers he has, and I don't know, some subs he had that he actually wore in the combat. Like, it was really, really cool. And he actually pulled out his watch roll that he was traveling with, and I remember at the time the person I was traveling with was like, dude, we got to get to the gate. What the hell are you doing? And here I was just having like a full blown talking watches with this guy.
It happens.
But yeah, it's an amazing passion. It's an amazing hobby. And it really, I don't know why, but it's beyond like, I don't know, if you like basketball and you're like a Lakers fan, sure, you can have conversation about the Lakers, but something about talking about watches, you go so much deeper. And maybe it's what you said, actually, about how watches have stories tied to them. And there's always reasons behind both purchases and why you're lusting after something. And you get to know someone on a way deeper level when you talk about watches.
Absolutely. I think that's true. And I'll say that with watch groups, it's really fun because, one of the features of a watch group that I was in at a prior company was people would often do state of the collection. So you get a chance to see what other people have got and dig into why they have them, when did they get them, what was the purchase for. So again, some of that connective tissue. And one of the things that happened on the watch group that I was in, which I don't condone, is occasionally people would come onto the watch group and say that they had been offered a particular piece by a retailer that they didn't necessarily want. But in order to develop purchase history, they would purchase it and sell it to someone at retail within the group if they were interested in doing that, just so they could have that kind of purchase history and hopefully find themselves in a position to get something better later on. But that's, I mean, clearly not something I would condone.
I don't know why you wouldn't condone that. Actually, I'm. Hold on a second. If I don't know what watch you're talking about, obviously, or like what brand, but I don't know. There's so many watches out there you can flip, and particularly during like the hype cycle or whatever, you know, any watch from Rolex, if someone was offering you at an AD, you could sell as soon as you walked out the door for more money, right? It kind of goes back to what I was saying about that Watch Zach group is people wanted to stay in the community, and as long as they're open and honest about why they're doing it, like you're helping me get purchase history. I disagree with you.
I don't know that I don't condone it from a person to person transaction. I'm just saying the retailer wouldn't be happy about the flip.
Well, if it's a true flip.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if it's the same price.
Isn't that a flip?
I don't know. I don't know if, I mean, yes, it is a flip technically, but you're not profiting off of it.
True.
You're just gaining goodwill with that retailer.
Right. But I think the retailer at least presupposes on some level that you're meant to keep it for a year, something like that. I don't know that I've always heard about some unspoken, unwritten rules around the length of time that you're supposed to keep a watch before you resell it. I don't know that Rolex has very specific ideas about that, but I do know that certain retailers frown upon, resale within a particular window of time.
Well, why don't you guys, actually, listeners, let us know what you think about this? Because clearly Gina and I don't see eye to eye on this, and we have some different opinions, which I actually didn't know entering into this episode. But listen, we're hitting time here, so maybe we'll just recap on like some tips of the trade, you know, with like truly making deep connections with people around watches. Like, you know, ask about why people are into watches, why they're wearing the watches they are, why they decided to go out and spend hard-earned money on the watch they're wearing. Don't make the first question, is that
it real?
Yeah.
Is it authentic?
It's a weird question to ask. Like, just strange. Do not do that.
Don't ask what you paid for it.
Correct. That's exactly
whether you got it for retail or secondary.
Yep. But ask about the wearing experience, right? If you've never seen that watch in person, or if you've never spoken to someone who's owned it, ask them about it. Everyone's got weird gripes, right? Like people like don't like something about a bracelet, or like you only really know if you've had intimate time with that watch. And like also remember the negatives, right? Like there's some people approach you to ask about watches. Understand their intention, right? There's obviously some people out there who are looking at the nice watch you have on and assuming something about you and want something from you, right? And I think, I don't know if a lot of us have been in that situation. I've certainly been in that situation. It's typically when you're wearing like a precious metal watch of some kind, and people just assume that they can get something out of you. And that's not awesome. And you can attract the wrong type of people. But wear whatever the hell you want to wear, have the conversations you want to have. But when it comes to watches, like, don't ask stupid questions. And I promise you, it'll open doors and maybe even get you in rooms you never thought you'd be in, and connect with people that you didn't think you'd have a chance at saying 2 words to.
100%.
And I think that's awesome thing about watches. All right. That's it. Let's all subscribe to this podcast. We'll do it at the same time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hit subscribe. And follow us on socials at the Dialed In Pod. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.